Hey, I'm Jori Grym from the Hanken School of Economics in Helsinki, and welcome to this module. We're going to talk about perception. You've probably seen some models of perception that go through the basic processes of perception and sensory data, and they usually go a bit like this. You first have a stimuli that your senses sense. So vision and hearing and taste and smell get some sort of stimuli. And you have your sensory receptors that are guided by attention to seek out little nuggets of information between all the sensory data you have. And after the attention has divided which is useful and which is not, you start to interpret that data and making it information as in what is that you're actually seeing and hearing and smelling. And you attach meaning to it. And when you have attached meaning to it, it starts sipping into actual working memory, and you get responses and analysis of that information. And the whole process is called perception. So let's start with the first part, which is sensation. So we have sensory organs that take in all the information that is bombarded to it all the time. You may think of sights that we see and smells and hearing and taste and textures we feel, but you mustn't forget that those are only the typical first five that we actually always categorize as sense organs. We actually have a bunch of other ones. We have a sense of balance. That's because of a fluid-filled vestibular system in our inner ear. So we always kind of know, are we tilted or not? We have the positioning of our bodies. So even in the dark, you know if your hand is in front of you or not through other senses, but through little receptors in our muscles called spinulus or spindles. And then we also have a bunch of other ones. We feel hot, cold, hungry, excited, thirsty, nauseous, and other bodily functions we do. So the myth of having five senses and maybe one spooky one is not really scientific. It's more a colloquial way of talking about them. So what we learn is we have all these sensory organs, and we get bombarded by data all the time, even when we're sleeping. This is not a conscious thing at all. And typically in the process that is used in consumer psychology, the next part is called attention. Attention is how the brain separates the important information, important data from the unimportant ones. So it's filtering the signal from the noise we get from our sensory organs. And it's a constant process. It's working when we're awake and we're asleep. We can be woken up even if we're unconscious. If attention seeks out and selects a different a certain stimuli, that's important. So our brains uses various mechanisms to do so, and they're both evolutionary heuristics, so evolutionary filters, if you will, and then learned responses as well that try to differentiate danger from safety and food from not food and those kinds of systems. And these are still all unconscious processes, as I just said. This does not mean that everything is instinct, though. We can learn to respond to different things without it being conscious. If you think about muscle memory, driving a car, playing a sport, or something like that, those are learned responses that guide attention to pick out the useful information from our sensory data, but they're not evolutionary per se, that we are born with them, or instinctual, but they're still unconscious. And you might think about like a highly trained meditator, a person who meditates, like a yogi or something. They won't even be startled by loud noises or something like that we usually think of instinctual attention filters. So next, the mind processes these stimuli and starts to interpret them and identify them. One important mechanism is the categorization of what we perceive. The mind uses tools like schemas and prototypes to do this and to make sense of what's around us. Schemas are collections of or webs of meaning and assumptions we attach to interpretations of the world. So this is how we start getting meat onto the bone of the objects and situations we sense and perceive. Prototypes, on the other hand, are like models or icons of a typical object of a certain category, and we compare what we perceive to identify it. So if you have a basic chair in your head that usually has 4 legs and a backrest, that's what we kind of use to compare other objects we see and then to make the decision if it's a chair or not. So, and after this rudimentary filtering and categorization and identifying process, we start to cognitively analyze the context, the meaning, and the interaction with us more complexly. Complexly? Let's hope that's a word. The whole process is usually considered the perceptual process. But of course, like always in science, there are different models and different competing schools of thought, what actually contains as a perception process and how it goes forward. But most of them have these elements in it. And that's how sensory information becomes a perception. And please go through all the material we provided and assignments, and we'll continue to explore perception together online in this module. Thanks.